Welcome to Inside True Stories, where real-life confrontations, courage, and justice unfold. The late afternoon sun cast long, golden shadows across the freshly laid wood chips, making the brand-new playground gleam like a forgotten treasure. It was a wonderland of bright, primary colors. A towering red slide coiled like a friendly snake. A jungle gym of brilliant blue bars that twisted into impossible geometric shapes. And a set of swings, their yellow seats swaying gently in the barely there breeze. The entire area was pristine, untouched, and utterly silent. There was no rustle of children. No high-pitched laughter echoing off the expensive, suburban homes that framed the property. The only sound was the low, distant hum of lawnmowers and the soft shuffle of a woman's feet on the clean ground. Her name was Sarah Jensen, and she looked out of place. While the houses around her were monuments to wealth and manicured perfection, Sarah was a study in comfortable disarray. Her dark hair was tied back in a loose, messy bun, a few strands escaping to frame a face that carried the subtle, weary lines of a person who had seen too much. She wore a simple, faded t-shirt and well-worn jeans, and she moved with a quiet, deliberate slowness, as if she were in a place of sacred importance. In her hand, she clutched a small, plastic Toya miniature, bright red fire truck. Its paint chipped and worn from countless hours of play. She wasn't here to play. She was here to grieve. Sarah had been coming here every day for the past week, ever since the last of the construction fences had been taken down. She would sit on a newly installed park bench, her gaze fixed on the swings, and for a few quiet moments, she could almost hear the sound of her daughter, Lily, laughing as she was pushed higher and higher into the air. The playground was a dream, a promise she had made. It was a promise she had nearly lost everything to keep. She didn't notice the patrol car until it pulled silently to the curb, its engine cutting off with a soft click. The sound was stark and jarring in the quiet afternoon. A young officer, his uniform crisp and his movements efficient, stepped out. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a clean-cut jaw and an air of professional authority that seemed to hang around him like a new coat of paint. This was Officer Miller, and he was on his first week of solo patrol in the prestigious Lakeshore Heights development. His orders were clear. The new private playground was a high-priority asset, and he was to maintain a visible presence. No loitering, no trespassing. He'd been told a prominent developer, a Mr. Alistair Finch, was the owner and was particularly sensitive about unauthorized access before the official ribbon-cutting ceremony. Officer Miller approached Sarah with a practiced, neutral expression. His hand rested lightly on his belt, a subtle posture of control. "Ma'am," he said, his voice a low, steady baritone, "is there something I can help you with?" Sarah turned, her eyes the color of a stormy sea, meeting his. There was no surprise in her expression, only a deep, abiding sadness. "I'm fine, thank you," she replied softly. She didn't move from the bench, her fingers still wrapped tightly around the small fire truck. Miller's gaze swept over her. Her messy hair, the worn clothes, the faint smudge of dirt on her cheek. He registered her posture, stooped, but not submissive. He had seen this type before, people drawn to new, wealthy-looking developments, hoping to find an unlocked door or a careless homeowner. His tone shifted, losing its gentle pretense. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This is private property. Sarah's hand tightened on the toy. I'm aware of that, officer, she said, her voice still quiet, but with a subtle new firmness. But I'm not trespassing. A small, almost imperceptible line appeared between Miller's brows. He took a step closer. Ma'am, the entire area is restricted until the official opening. There are no visitors allowed. I'm going to need you to gather your things and exit the premises now. He felt the confidence of his position. He was the law, and she was an intruder. The story was simple. But something about her calm defiance unsettled him. I understand, officer, she said again. And I'm telling you, I have every right to be here. I'm not leaving. His patience, already thin from a long day of tedious paperwork, began to fray. Look, I don't want to have to do this. I'm telling you one last time. This is private property, and you are currently trespassing. If you don't comply, I'll have to escort you off the property and issue you a citation. He wasn't bluffing. His hand moved from his belt to his radio, a clear signal. Sarah didn't flinch. Her gaze remained fixed on the playground, a distant, pained look in her eyes. There's no need for that, she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. This place, it's mine. Miller scoffed, a short, humorless sound. The gall of it. The lie was so blatant, so ridiculous. He looked at her worn t-shirt and scuffed sneakers, and then at the pristine, multi-million-dollar playground behind her. Ma'am, he said, the condescension now thick in his voice. This playground was built by the Finch Development Group. It's part of a multi-million-dollar project. I'm quite certain you don't own it. He spoke to her as if she were a child who had told a preposterous untruth. He was sure he was right. Sarah finally looked directly at him. And for the first time, he saw a flicker of something raw and furious in her eyes. A deep-seated anger that seemed to have been simmering just beneath the surface. It wasn't the anger of a trespasser caught in the act. It was something deeper, something far more potent. I know who built it, officer, she said, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. I know better than anyone. Her words hung in the air, creating a new, confusing tension. A few neighbors, drawn by the sight of the patrol car and the standoff, had begun to gather on the sidewalks, their phones already out, their expressions a mix of curiosity and self-righteousness. They were the people who had paid a fortune for their homes and who viewed this new playground as an extension of their private, exclusive world. Their silent judgment was a palpable force. They saw a uniformed officer and a scruffy-looking woman, and their minds had already made a snap, uncharitable judgment. Officer Miller felt the weight of their gaze. He had to resolve this, and quickly. He couldn't afford a public scene on his first week. His jaw tightened. All right, that's enough, he said, reaching for his handcuffs. I gave you a chance. You're under arrest for criminal trespassing. He had expected her to recoil, to finally give in, but she didn't. Instead, her quiet defiance hardened into something unbreakable. You're making a mistake, officer, she said, a new cold clarity in her tone. I'm not going to leave. and you're not going to arrest me." He was stunned by her absolute certainty. He'd never had a simple trespassing case escalate like this. "I'm giving you a direct order," he snapped. "Step away from the bench now." Sarah let out a small, tired sigh. "Fine," she said, her shoulders slumping just a fraction. She reached into the worn canvas bag at her feet, and a new wave of tension washed over Miller. Was she reaching for a weapon? He tensed, his hand going to his own sidearm. He was in full fight-or-flight mode. The neighbors, too, seemed to hold their breath, a collective gasp rippling through the small crowd. She didn't pull out a weapon. Instead, she pulled out a thick, legal-looking folder, its manila surface creased and worn. From it, she withdrew a single sheet of paper, folded crisply and with a flourish of official seals stamped in the corner. She held it out to him, her expression a mix of sorrow and grim victory. "Before you go through with this, officer," she said, her voice now a firm, unwavering command, "I suggest you take a moment to read this." Miller's heart hammered against his ribs. He was being challenged in front of a dozen onlookers by a woman who looked like she didn't have a pot to piss in. He felt a hot flush of embarrassment and frustration. He took the paper from her, his fingers fumbling slightly, and unfolded it with a sharp, impatient snap. His eyes scanned the top of the page, expecting to see a receipt for a park permit or perhaps a rental agreement. What he saw instead made the blood drain from his face. The words, bold and centered, screamed at him, "Property deed." He looked at the legal description, the lot numbers, and then his eyes fell to the final, critical line. The owner's name, printed in stark black ink, Sarah Jensen. He stared at the document, his mind struggling to process the information. It was official, signed and stamped. The date on it was from 6 months ago, right when the project had broken ground. He looked up from the paper, his head spinning, and his gaze fell on Sarah again. He saw her now in a new light. Her worn clothes were not a sign of poverty, but of comfort. The faint smudges of dirt were from her own work on her own land. He looked at her wrist, which she had kept mostly hidden, and saw a glimmer of polished gold and the subtle sparkle of a diamond watch. She hadn't been fidgeting with her hands. She had been unconsciously touching a wedding ring. This wasn't a trespasser. This was the owner. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. He had been so sure, so smug, so convinced he was right. He had profiled her, judged her, and in his arrogance, had been about to arrest her on her own land. His cheeks burned with a deep, humiliating shame. He looked at the onlookers, their faces a collective mask of confusion and quiet horror as they realized what was unfolding. Their whispers died down to a stunned silence. He quickly folded the deed and handed it back to her, his hand trembling slightly. "Ma'am," he began, his voice hoarse, I don't know what to say. "I am so sorry, I didn't." Sarah cut him off, her voice still quiet, but filled with a profound weariness. "You assumed, officer. You saw what you expected to see. A woman in worn jeans, standing alone on a playground that looked like it belonged to someone else. You didn't ask. You just told me to leave. And that's the problem, isn't it? Everyone assumes." She sat back down on the bench, the tension slowly leaving her body. The small red fire truck was still clutched in her hand. The crowd on the sidewalk began to disperse, a few of them looking at their shoes in embarrassment, muttering quiet apologies as they retreated. One of them, a woman he recognized as Mrs. Henderson from 2 houses down, gave him a small, sympathetic grimace. She had been one of the first to call the station about the suspicious woman on the property. Miller stood there, a statue of professional failure. He felt the weight of his badge, which suddenly felt incredibly heavy and oppressive. He had been so quick to judge, to enforce, to assume he knew the whole story. "I apologize again, ma'am. Is there anything I can do?" he asked, his voice now a genuine plea. "Can I help you get a sign up? I was told this was Mr. Finch's project." Sarah looked up, a sad, soft smile on her face. "It was his project, in a way," she said, her voice losing its hard edge. "He's my husband's business partner. He's the one who handled all the construction. My husband, Thomas, and we bought this land years ago. We always planned to build a home here, right on this spot. But then, things changed." She paused, her gaze drifting back to the playground. The red slide, the blue jungle gym, the yellow swings. "We lost our daughter, Lily, in a car accident last year. She was 6. We had a lot of conversations about what to do with the land. We could have sold it. We could have built a house and lived here with the ghosts. But Thomas and we decided we couldn't." Her voice cracked slightly, but she steadied it. "This playground, it was Thomas's idea. He saw it as a way to build something beautiful where there had been so much pain. It's a gift for all the children in the community. It's a place where they can play and be happy, where they can laugh as loud as they want." She looked at the small fire truck in her hand. Lily loved fire trucks. She called them Weavovs. "We bought this little one at the hospital gift shop just after she was born." She held it out to him, and he saw the chipped paint, the worn plastic, and understood the weight of it. Miller was silent for a long moment, the full gravity of his error sinking in. He had approached this woman, a grieving mother who had turned her unimaginable loss into a monument of joy for her community, and had been about to put her in handcuffs. The raw, cold shame was a terrible thing. "I am truly, profoundly sorry," he said again, the words feeling inadequate and hollow. "I had no idea." Sarah finally looked at him, and for the first time, he saw a hint of forgiveness in her eyes. "Now you know," she said simply. She stood up, her movements graceful and fluid. She walked over to the swings, her worn sneakers crunching softly on the wood chips. She gently placed the small fire truck on the seat of one of the swings, a small, silent tribute. "I don't need a sign," she said, turning to face him. "This place is meant to be for everyone. The only thing I wanted was for it to be a place of joy, not a place of conflict." Miller nodded, his head still bowed slightly. He understood now. He had come here, an agent of the law, and had nearly created a spectacle of pain and embarrassment. He had been so focused on the rules, on the assumptions, that he had failed to see the humanity right in front of him. "Thank you for sharing your story with me," he said. "It means a lot." She gave him a small, sad smile, a gesture of peace and quiet understanding. Just try not to judge a book by its cover, officer. Especially when it's one you haven't read yet. She gave a last, lingering look at the playground, at the bright colors and the empty swings. A sanctuary built from a broken heart, and then she turned and walked away. A solitary figure disappearing into the long shadows of the late afternoon. Miller stood alone in the quiet, pristine playground, a humbled guardian of a truth he had nearly missed entirely. The small, red fire truck sat on the swing seat, a silent, profound monument to a love that had built a place for others to laugh and play. He knew he would never forget this day, or the woman who had taught him the difference between a law and a story. The playground was now more than just a place of bright colors and polished surfaces. It was a place of quiet, dignified strength. A place built by a woman who knew the deepest kind of loss and had chosen to turn it into a beautiful, lasting gift. And for the first time, Officer Miller saw its true value. He finally understood why she had been so determined to stay.